Hollywood actress and legend Elizabeth Taylor was widely known for more than just her acting and beauty. Homegirl is infamous for her messy 8 marriages, and today we'll talk about all her husbands on today's episode of the Old Hollywood Storytime. This is a multi-part series, so make sure to come back and check all the parts. Elizabeth Taylor's first husband, Conrad Hilton. Elizabeth Taylor was just 18 years old when she married her first husband, Conrad Hilton. Yes, you heard that right, that Hilton. Their wedding was in May 6, 1950, which was highly publicized by the film studios to drum up interest for their upcoming film, Father of the Bride, which Taylor was starring in. It was a huge, star-studded event, especially since Liz had been a huge child star. Her fans around the world saw her grow up on screen becoming a young woman. She looked like an absolute princess. Like Homegirl was dripping in glamour, like her princess ball gown is everything. And her hubby Conrad came from the Hilton dynasty. So despite Liz already being wealthy, our girl was marrying up. Homegirl was a romantic at heart, was going into this marriage in hopes of getting away from her parents' control. She was heavily spoiled by them, but she did not like being so sheltered, so to her marriage seemed like the best way out. However, she didn't realize as a teenager she ended up marrying a grown-ass man who was an abusive alcoholic. Elizabeth Taylor's second husband, Michael Wilding. Elizabeth Taylor's second husband was British actor Michael Wilding. As both were in the same industry and profession, Liz thought it made sense being with someone who understands the craziness of Hollywood cinema. The pair had 2 sons, Michael Jr. being the firstborn in 1953, then followed by Christopher in 1955. Even though Michael and Liz were both actors, Elizabeth's star was bigger and rose up much more higher. That created jealousy and tensions between the couple. And babes, in the end, they drifted apart and divorced in 1957 but stayed amicable in raising their sons. However, when they separated, film producer Mike Todd slid into Elizabeth's DM 1950s style and confessed his undying love for her, and boy did she swoon. Elizabeth Taylor's third husband, Mike Todd. In the end of her second marriage, her friend film producer Mike Todd reached out to her immediately and confessed his undying love for her, and bro was obsessed with conquering his queen. Our girl Lizzie was mesmerized by him, and both had a whirlwind relationship, which led to them marrying that same year. Mike and Liz had an age gap of 23 years, but homegirl didn't give a she loved Mike Todd regardless. In 1957, the couple welcomed their daughter, Liza Todd. It was so obvious that they loved their blended family, and Liz finally had the stability she craved for. Mike loved planes, and bro was so mesmerized by Elizabeth that he even named his plane the Liz. Like, if that ain't love, then what is?
And she just fell madly in love with Mike Todd, who was really a charismatic guy. Oh, the women loved him. When he met Elizabeth, though, he just flipped for Elizabeth, and she with him.
You know, a lot of guys grow up, and they want to become president of the United States. With me, I just wanted to grow up and marry Elizabeth Taylor. And I did.
The couple were extremely close to singer Eddie Fisher and actress Debbie Reynolds. Eddie and Deb were the maid of honor and groomsmen at Mike's and Lizzie's wedding, so both spent a lot of time together as well as their kids. Debbie and Ed's firstborn son was named Todd Fisher after Mike Todd. Sadly, tragedy would soon struck, ruining both families for good.
In the private plane named for his wife, the drama of the showman reaches fini. He was rarely without her, as in these last films of him alive. Mike Todd left Elizabeth Taylor in Hollywood because she had a virus, and flew to his death in an isolated mountain valley 22 miles southwest of Grants, New Mexico. A writer, Art Cohen, a pilot and co-pilot lost their lives with Mr. Todd. Unofficial theory blames the crash on icing, which it is said the pilot reported a few minutes before the crash.
Now, Elizabeth Taylor at age 26 was a fairly young widow with a baby to raise aside from her 2 sons. The world truly saw how brokenly devastated she was over Mike's sudden death. At first, when they married, many people thought homegirl just married him for money, not love, but as she's grieving the loss of her husband, many realized how their impression of the couple was not accurate at all.
An untimely death happened, and Elizabeth had just had her baby, a little girl.
He was killed in an airplane.
He was killed in a plane crash going to, I think it was the Friars roast in New York for somebody, and I heard the news about Mike's plane crash and no survivors, so I quickly awakened Eddie, and I said, you have to go right away. So we both went to Elizabeth's house, and the doctors had just gotten there, and they just told her, and she was screaming, and it was just awful. And so I said to Eddie, you should stay because I'll take the children and take them home, because now the press is swarming all over her house. And it was a rental house, and it was right on the street, and it wasn't protected. So I left with the nurse and the 2 children, and my husband was with Elizabeth, and stayed with Elizabeth. But he was a great comfort to her, and I was happy for that.
The Fishers had a strong, tight bond with Mike and Elizabeth, but sadly when Mike passed away, deadass his bitch of a best friend would swoop in and marry his devastated grieving widow. Elizabeth Taylor's 4th husband, Eddie Fisher. After the death of her 3rd husband, Mike Todd, Elizabeth began an affair with her best friend's husband, Eddie Fisher. Now the world was outraged at Liz and Eddie for betraying Mike and Debbie. Like, you do not understand how big this betrayal was.
I married Eddie, and because Elizabeth was with Mike Todd, we became closer then. And when she married Mike, I was her matron of honor. Down in Acapulco, I washed her hair, I set her hair, and got her all dressed for her wedding. Little did I know what the future was going to be. And I really liked Elizabeth, you know, and I liked being with the 4 of us, had a lot of fun together at that time. So what came about comes about in life, and now it's long in the past, but that's how all that started.
When the world found out about the affair, it forever shattered her image of Elizabeth as the poor, innocent, grieving widow. It was clearly obvious that Ed left his wife and young children for her fucking bestie. No. And y'all, Debbie was a virgin when she married Eddie, so she didn't have a lot of experience in love. She wasn't the provocative or sexy type, but Liz was. The scandal made the public despise Eddie and Liz for the ultimate betrayal against the sweet Debbie Reynolds. But, babes, y'all know that Eddie's own daughter, Carrie Fisher, explains his affair so well.
My father, he so adored this man, Mike Todd, that my brother Todd was named for him. But you know, in the Jewish faith, it is considered bad luck to name a newborn after someone who's still living. A silly superstition. Or so they thought. Because about a year later, Mike Todd took off in a private plane in a rainstorm.
Liz Taylor was in a state of collapse following the death of her husband in a plane crash.
And the following morning, Elizabeth was a widow. Well, you know, naturally, my father flew to Elizabeth's side, gradually making his way slowly to her front. He dried her eyes with his handkerchief, he consoled her with flowers, and ultimately he consoled her with his penis. This made marriage to my mother awkward. And so he was gone within the week.
Ed would go on to marry his wife's best friend, completely ruining his singing and television career. And Liz was blacklisted, and studios forced her to take horrible roles she truly despised. The couple were hated by fans, but loved by the tabloid press. The public just couldn't see her as a grieving widow anymore, but Liz did not care anymore. The scandalous pair would marry on May 12, 1959. This would be Ed's second marriage, and Elizabeth's fourth, and they were shamelessly affectionate, which angered the public. Rightfully so, if I may say. In their marriage, things changed when the baddie Liz was casted to play Cleopatra alongside Welsh actor Richard Burton. Liz and Richard both met a decade prior, but our baddie wasn't fond of him then, so she wasn't too eager to work with him, but she respected his dedication to the craft. Both actors were married, but their burning chemistry between them led them to start a fiery, passionate affair. Our homeboy Richard was married to Sybil Williams since 1949 and had 2 daughters. And the little bitch Eddie was suspicious of Richard's intentions, so bitch boy would visit them at set. But deadass, it was so awkward and hilarious how Liz was gaslighting Eddie's real legit concerns. Ed knew what Liz was capable of doing since they did worse to Debbie. His wife constantly assured him that she has nothing romantic going on with Richard.
I want to leave you. I'm wanting you. I'm being afraid.
That's Caesar. Would not permit it.
Liz and Richard were very careless about their affair and got caught up in their yacht. This was humiliating to Eddie, but it's satisfying to me since it was a taste of his own medicine. Later on, a separate incident, Eddie calls his wife Liz when she's away filming, but her co-star Richard answered her phone instead. Eddie asked, "What are you doing there?" Richard replied, "What do you think I'm doing? I'm f***ing your wife." This left Ed gagged, but bro, still clinging on to the marriage, but that changed when their friends are gathered at his home. That's when a very drunk Burton barges into the home and demands Liz to choose between him or Ed. Mind you, this was in front of all of Liz and Eddie's friends. Everyone was shocked, but Liz got up to kiss Burton, cementing her decision. Right there, Eddie knew it was over. Ed had a hard time of accepting the deterioration of his marriage, especially since his wife betrayed him so publicly. Doesn't that sound familiar? Fisher felt defrauded by Burton as homeboy took his wife and was ruthless in rubbing it in his face. Elizabeth Taylor's 5th husband, Richard Burton. Now that Liz chose her co-star Richard Burton, bro is dead ass, still married to his wife Sybil, and y'all, she was aware of the affair but thought this one would end after filming, just like all his previous ones he had, but this time it was different. He ended his 14-year marriage to marry his co-star.
During the filming of Cleopatra.
Very interesting, because Richard and I fell in love on the set of Cleopatra, and we tried not to.
The new couple would work together on 11 films throughout their messy relationship, and back then Burton was considered a serious, respectable actor while Liz was considered just a pretty face bombshell, but both helped each other grow professionally. The pair would marry on March 15, 1964, making this union Richard's 2nd marriage and Elizabeth's 5th. God damn that, a lot of marriages, but Old Hollywood was really that messy bitch. Burton was an alcoholic long before Liz. Bro struggled constantly while Taylor began to be addicted to opioids. They would have intense screaming matches in public and in private, constantly reconcile, and then break up again. Both would have affairs with other people, however. It's stated that Burton would physically cheat on Liz with younger women while Elizabeth would cheat on him emotionally. I don't really believe that. I feel like both cheated physically and emotionally, like this is messy Liz. They were ghetto as fuck, okay? They didn't care to publicly self-destruct themselves and bitch. You just know damn well the messy tabloids adored the fallout of their failing marriage. They were sick of each other, and after 10 years of marriage, they divorced in 1974. Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton's 2nd marriage? However, their divorce wouldn't last long as Liz and Richard struggled being apart and feeling like they couldn't live without each other, so the next year they remarried. They're so toxic, I love it. It was great at first, but soon their same old issues came back and became too much to handle. They realized their toxic patterns were not going away and nothing could change that. They realized that just because you're passionately, undeniably in love with someone, that still won't be enough to make this love endure for a lifetime. The messy couple would finally divorce on July 1976, officially ending their love story.
That was an empty bottle, George. You can't afford to waste good liquor.
The story of an unhappy marriage seemed to parallel Elizabeth's life. In the mid-70s, the Burtons divorced, then remarried and divorced again. It was the end of a 14-year passionate romance, the longest of her life. What went wrong?
Perhaps, it sounds silly, I think we would have been married again. I think we were so passionately in love with each other that the highs were too high. It was almost like everything was too much. We loved each other almost too much. It sounds silly.
No, it doesn't.
But it was so intense that it was almost abnormal. But it was great. And we thought about each other, and we talked about each other, and whenever we'd see each other...
Even after the divorce?
Oh, yeah, in between marriages and stuff, we'd flirt with each other, and if we were sitting next to each other, we'd feel each other under the table. And it was very hard for me to accept his death. It took a long time.
Was he the love of your life?
Mike and Richard were the loves of my life. They were both...
Elizabeth Taylor's 6th husband, John Warner. After Burton, Elizabeth began a romantic relationship with U.S. politician John Warner, a senator from Virginia. Liz thought a more relaxed and hardworking man who already deals with the media would be much easier to compromise than her chaotic exes. She was still a romantic at heart, and the couple married in 1976. And y'all look, by now, Liz was already 44 years old, so she must be wiser, right? She was ready for a more quieter life, so I really don't get why she would marry a freaking politician of all people. She was bored as fuck being a senator's wife. Like, homegirl is used to the glitz and glam of Hollywood, so boring politics in Washington was a downgrade for her. She was immersed in political responsibilities she neither enjoyed nor felt fulfilled by. The demands of Warner's career and emotional distance led to their divorce in 1982. She later admitted she felt lonely during the marriage. But hey, if it weren't for that marriage, she'd never create the fragrance empire she built out of boredom. Queen. Elizabeth Taylor's seventh husband, Larry Fortensky. Elizabeth Taylor's final marriage was to construction worker Larry Fortensky. My girl really met him while in rehab at the Betty Ford Center. They both got clean and began a romantic relationship despite having an age gap of 20 years. Liz was 59, while Larry was 39, but she was addicted to the young Riz. Their wedding took place at Michael Jackson's Neverland Ranch, drawing global attention. Despite genuine affection, they struggled badly with differences in lifestyle and the pressures of Taylor's fame. Unlike her previous marriages, this was one much calmer, and Larry wasn't a gold digger. Y'all, he actually cared about our queen. He had a difficult time being in the public eye, and he hated seeing so much scrutiny that Liz had to deal for decades. Liz was already advanced in age, so she had a lot of health complications, but Larry was there by her side. But the pressures became too much, and Larry relapsed by drinking again that led to DUI. By now, Liz was too old and had finally realized that not every love story has to end in marriage. Liz and Larry's marriage lasted 5 years, and divorced amicably on October 31st, 1996. Unlike many of her previous divorces, Taylor and Fortensky remained close friends for the rest of her life. Bro remained hella loyal, and Bro flat out refused lucrative tabloid offers to speak poorly of her. Oh, we love a man who understood the assignment. Taylor even helped him cover his medical expenses later in life. And when she passed away in 2011, our darling, Liz made sure to leave him $800,000 in her will. After her passing, Larry stated, "I have wonderful memories of my time with Elizabeth, and I will treasure her memory forever. I love her. I always will." And babes, that's it for today's episode of the Old Hollywood Storytime, all of the husbands of Elizabeth Taylor. Feel free to suggest any of your favorites old Hollywood starlets for future episodes. Stay tuned, my cinematic stars.